The preliminary results of the investigation revealed that an Azerbaijani Airlines plane traveling on the Baku-Grozny route was attacked on its approach to the city of Grozny by the Russian Pantsir S air defense system. Moreover, as a result of the use of electronic warfare systems by the Russian side, the communication system of the Azerbaijani aircraft was completely paralyzed. It was with this circumstance that the plane disappeared from radars in the Russian airspace and was restored only in the area of the Caspian Sea. It should be noted that according to Russian sources, at the time of the flight over the territory of Chechnya, Russian air defense forces tried to shoot down Ukrainian UAVs. Thus, the head of the Security Council of the Chechen Republic, Kamzat Kadyrov, confirmed the fact of a drone attack on Grozny on the morning of December 25th, noting that there were no casualties or damage. In such a case, the Russian side was obliged to close its airspace to civilian aircraft, which, however, was not done. As is known, the airport in Grozny did not give permission for the plane to land. Moreover, our flight was also not given permission to land at the airports in Makhachkala and Mineralny Vody. The disoriented crew of the flight, which was subjected to air defense fire and electronic warfare systems, was recommended to land in the Kazakh city of Aktau. Presumably, this recommendation was given for one purpose: for the plane to fall into the Caspian Sea. All witnesses would be killed, and the plane would sink. The alternative versions that are being circulated in the Russian media are purposeful innuendo to mislead public opinion. Video footage from the cabin of the plane shows that 2 passengers were injured by shrapnel. All testimonies, including those concerning explosions heard overboard, point to the work of air defences. For the Azerbaijani side, the situation is absolutely obvious. No one claims that it was done purposefully. However, taking into account the established facts, Baku expects the Russian side to confess to the shooting down of the Azerbaijani aircraft and to conduct a full investigation, which will result in bringing to justice all those responsible.
There were 2 explosions outside the plane and shrapnel fell into the plane's cabin. These are the words of Aydan Rahimli. She is a stewardess of Azerbaijani Airlines, one of the survivors of Baku-Grozny flight.
The plane was in good condition. There was no malfunction. It attempted to land at Grozny airport once, but it didn't succeed. It tried a second time, but again, it was unsuccessful. On the 3rd attempt, the plane was struck from the left side. At that moment, oxygen masks dropped down.
After the explosion, chaos engulfed the plane cabin and the passengers panicked. Stewardess Aydan tried her best to calm them, but soon her fellow flight attendant got wounded.
We were trying to calm the passengers and telling them not to unfasten their seatbelts. Then we heard the sound of an explosion and a second strike occurred. After the second strike, our flight attendant, Mr. Zulfagar, was injured in the arm. I provided first aid and gave him water. Those moments were very stressful because he could have lost a lot of blood, and it was necessary to stop the bleeding.
And that is when emergency landing was announced by pilots, and lead flight attendant Hükümet started to give instructions to cabin crew and passengers.
Lead stewardess asked, "Do you know what to do as a first aid?" And I said yes. She said, "Okay, then we are making an emergency landing." But it should have been a normal emergency landing. We did not know what's going to happen. Ms. Hukuma explained to the passengers all the necessary information about the situation. She said, "Everything is going to be fine."
Aydan says she was at the very back of the plane, at the place of service of flight attendants. In the last minutes, she only saw the passengers who were in the brace position, according to emergency landing rules.
The plane continued to fly, searching for a place to land. It wasn't working. It kept ascending and descending. The most tragic moments were at the very end. At that moment, the plane started rapidly descending. We were all seated, removed the mask, and tightened our seatbelts. I lowered my head and sat in the brace position. The plane was still descending. Then I was thrown to the right, then to the left. The seatbelt held me in place. When I opened my eyes, the plane was upside down.
Seatbelts fastened stewardess to her seat and she stayed there until very end. Aydan Rahimli says they did not know where they landed. When she got out of plane, people were already there to help, and it was then Aydan heard that they are in Aktau, Kazakhstan. Stewardess of Azal says it is a miracle that half of the people survived the crash.
During our visit to survivors, including those with Russian citizenship, all of them, without exception, stated that they heard 3 blast sounds when the aircraft was above Grozny city. They indicated that these sounds came from outside, suggesting there was an external impact on the plane. As a result of the blast, one of the flight attendants sustained injuries to her hand, while another woman suffered injuries to both her hand and leg. In other footage, holes are visible on the plane's wing, along with various signs of damage inside the plane, particularly in its interior parts, caused by what appears to be an impact from sharp external objects. Our investigation team, along with aviation specialists invited for this case, will now examine what kind of weapon, or rather, what kind of rocket, was used.
Azerbaijan State Civil Aviation Agency cancels flights to several Russian cities, including Mineralny Vody, Sochi, Volgograd, Ufa, Samara, Grozny, and Makhachkala. The decision has been made taking into account the preliminary results of the investigation into the crash of the Embraer 190 aircraft of Azerbaijan Airlines flight J28243 Baku-Grozny, due to physical and technical external interference. Also earlier, Azerbaijan Airlines informed that the captain of Azerbaijan Airlines flight J28717, operating en route Baku-Mineralny Vody, made the decision to return to the airport without leaving Baku airspace immediately after takeoff and receiving a notice to airmen about the closure of the airspace over Makhachkala.
The Kazakh airline has suspended part of its flights to Russia. Kazakh Air has announced that it's temporarily suspending flights on the Astana-Yekaterinburg route from December 28 to January 27. The company shared in a statement that the suspension of flights was carried out to ensure the safety of passengers and crew members based on the results of an ongoing risk assessment of flights to Russia. Also in March 2022, the Kazakh airline Air Astana suspended flights to Russia due to the termination of insurance coverage for commercial flights to this country. According to the last updated official information about plane crash, the second black box from the Azerbaijan Airlines plane has been recovered. As transport prosecutor of the Mangistau region says, 2 flight recorders retrieved will be handed over the Air Accident Investigation Division for analysis. He also noted that the survivors and ground service personnel have been questioned and efforts to identify additional witnesses are ongoing. The audio of radio chatter between the dispatcher and the crew has been collected. The inspection of the accident site, spanning over 2,000 square kilometers, is continuing. This is the latest news from here, Aktau. Fariza Kalimurzina, A News.
14 Azerbaijani citizens, including 1 child, injured in the crash of the Azerbaijan Airlines plane in Kazakhstan, were transported from Aktau to Baku in 2 planes, along with the bodies of the deceased passengers. The passengers in critical condition were delivered by an amphibian aircraft of the Ministry of Emergency Situations. 7 of the injured passengers were hospitalized immediately upon landing. Azerbaijan Airlines will pay compensation to each injured passenger and to the families of those who died in the crash. All passengers will receive insurance payments in accordance with the Azerbaijani law and international standards.
The Consuls General of Turkey, Uzbekistan and Iran arrived at the Consulate General of Azerbaijan in Akhtar to express their condolences and support after the tragic crash of an Azerbaijan Airlines Embraer 190. They signed a book of condolences and held a minute of silence in memory of the victims.
A tragic accident occurred yesterday. The plane flying from Baku to Grozny attempted to make an emergency landing, but this landing did not take place. As a result, a tragedy occurred, and many of our citizens died. As the Consulate General, after we received information about the incident, we began to fulfill our duties. I went to the scene, and our employees went to the hospital. Our employees were interested in the condition of our citizens. There were 67 people on the plane, and 38 of them died. Of these 38, 26 were Azerbaijani citizens. Of the 16 surviving citizens, 12 are in good condition.
Residents of Aktau, in a sign of grief over the plane crash, continue to bring flowers to the Consulate General of Azerbaijan in Kazakhstan.
These are all our fellow countrymen. Of course it hurts a lot. May they rest in peace.
We came to honor the memory of the deceased, and we wish the victims a speedy recovery. We work directly with the consulate, so we came to honor the memory and to fulfill our duty.
The tragic crash of an Azerbaijan Airlines Embraer 190 occurred on December 25th near Akhtar, Kazakhstan. Out of 67 passengers, 38 people died and 29 survived. The crash of an Azerbaijan Airlines flight near Aktau, Kazakhstan on Wednesday has sparked intense media coverage and speculation about the cause of the disaster. Al Jazeera stated that preliminary information suggested the plane requested to land at an alternative airport due to heavy fog in Grozny before the crash. TRT World reported that flight radar data showed the plane deviating from its planned route, crossing the Caspian Sea before circling the area where it ultimately crashed near Aktau. France 24 wrote that Flight Radar 24 data showed the plane making a figure 8 near Aktau with significant altitude fluctuations before crashing. The site also noted strong GPS jamming causing inaccurate flight data. Euronews referred to information from a news international news channel based in Azerbaijan, citing that, according to preliminary investigation results, Russian surface-to-air missile caused the Azerbaijan Airlines plane crash in Akhtar on Wednesday. Media outlet added that the missile was fired from a Pantsir S air defense system. Reuters reported, citing a news, that preliminary results indicated the plane was struck by a Russian Pantsir S air defense system. The Guardian stated that Kazakhstan's main transport prosecutor, Timur Süleymanov, confirmed in a briefing in Astana that the plane's black box containing critical flight data for investigating the cause of the crash had been recovered. CNN mentioned that 29 survivors were pulled from the wreckage, including many in critical condition. It reported that while the cause of the plane's detour across the Caspian Sea remains unclear, the crash followed drone strikes in southern Russia, which had led to airport closures, including the nearest Russian airport. ABC News detailed how extensive rescue operations were underway, with Kazakhstan sending medical teams to assist the injured. BBC tells a human story of a woman heading for the holidays died in the crash, while a mother carrying medical tests for her sick child is still missing. A young woman seeking news of her father on the flight learned that her brother survived, but their father remains unaccounted for.
As harrowing details emerge of the last moments of Azerbaijan Airlines Flight 8243, the flight crew who did their best to save the passengers until the last moment are being held as heroes, Euronews reports. The pilots displayed remarkable airmanship, according to experts, as they managed to fly the stricken plane across the Caspian Sea and crash-landed just 3 kilometers short of the Aktau airport runway. Captain, co-pilot and purser lost their lives in the crash landing, while the other 2 flight attendants reportedly survived and were being treated in hospital.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has made a significant statement regarding the nation's military capabilities. Putin confirmed that Russia is prepared to deploy more powerful medium-range weapons if deemed necessary. He specifically mentioned the possibility of using Oreshnik medium-range ballistic missile systems, which are part of Russia's growing strategic defense plans. Putin also revealed plans to station some of these systems in Belarus, further intensifying regional tensions. Earlier in discussions with Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, Putin noted that this deployment could happen as early as the second half of 2025.
Peru's government declared an environmental emergency after a crude oil spill from state-owned Petroperu affected beaches along the northern coast. The spill occurred on December 21 during pre-shipment operations at the Talara refinery. Minister of Environment Juan Carlos Castro announced the emergency for 7 beaches in the Talara and Lobitos area with a 90-day cleanup plan.
We declare an environmental emergency in the areas covering the geographical scope of 7 beaches in the provinces Talara and Lobitos. This is what we wanted to inform you about. The action taken with this emergency declaration, lasting for 90 working days, during which all affected areas by the hydrocarbon spill will need to be remedied and attended to.
The spill, which affected at least 10,000 square meters of sea and shoreline, has harmed local wildlife, including crabs and baby turtles, while fishermen report being unable to work due to contamination. We will have a lack of tourism in Lobitos. We will have a lack of tourism due to this contamination. We ask the responsible authorities to take action. Petroperu has yet to disclose the volume of oil spilled, but the government is focused on mitigating the damage and restoring the environment.